everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ultimate AFL show for season 2016. This is the show where I review each and every round of the 2016 AFL season. I also preview every round of the 2016 AFL season. So if you want a review and also a preview of the upcoming rounds, then this is the show to watch. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be looking back at round 8. There were some interesting games, some big talking points coming out of the round. Of course, Queensland footy, is it in crisis? Well, I'll tell you my thoughts about that throughout the review of round 8. Of course, I'm also going to be doing a stats wrap-up, looking back at all the latest leading goal kickers, disposals, marks and tackles after round 8. Of course, the ladder, as well as looking towards round 9, which is going to be another massive round of footy. So let's get straight into it. We start with the Friday night match between the Crows and the Cats. So round 8 started on Friday night at the beautiful Adelaide Oval between the Adelaide Crows and the Geelong Cats. Now, the big part of this game was Patrick Dangerfield up against his old side, the Adelaide Crows, a team that he played with last year and has played with for some time. Of course, playing with Geelong this year, and this was the first time he met his former side after that transfer. So that was the big part of this game, the big talking point, the big part of where the build-up was around. It was around Patrick Dangerfield against his old side, especially at Adelaide Oval. And he was a bit poor in the first half, I must say. It looked like he was a bit nervous, in my opinion. But anyway, getting to the game, Geelong, well, at quarter time, they led 3-8 to Adelaide 2-1. They had 8 behinds in the match. They should have had about, 10 goals, 11 goals in this first quarter. It was absolutely unbelievable. They were already on top of this game. Now, at half-time, the Crows were able to equal the same goals as the Cats at half-time, but the Cats had 13 behind, so it was 5-13 to the Adelaide Crows, 5-1. At three-quarter time, the game was slightly going away from the Crows, 9-17 to Adelaide, 11-3, although Adelaide had more goals than the Cats. The Cats still led at three-quarter time, and in the end, the Cats were able to win 13-20, 98, defeating the Crows 11-6, 72 at the Adelaide Oval. Let's have a look at the goal kickers. Motlop, well, he's probably in career best form at the moment. He's kicked 4 goals in this game. Kirsten kicked 3. Caddy, Duncan, Enright, Lang, Menzel and Stanley kicked singles each for the Cats. You then have the Crows goal kickers. Betts ended up kicking 2. Jenkins kicked 2, as well as McGovern and Walker. Walker having a slightly better game than the last couple of weeks, which is interesting to see. Atkins, Cameron and Sloan getting singles for the Crows. Tom Lonigan was actually out at quarter time, basically, for the Cats with that concussion, so they went through the game without a crucial player in Tom Lonigan, which was very, very good from a Cats point of view. Some talking points in this game. The goal kicker from Geelong was absolutely terrible, and they should have bagged away a few more goals. But the Seidman goal in the fourth quarter really, I guess, had a big moment and a big impact on the game. If he had got that, I reckon the Crows probably wouldn't have won, but they probably would have got closer than what they got. So, but anyway, Geelong were pretty dominant in this game, and they won it in the end pretty convincingly. Saturday afternoon started in Melbourne at Docklands, at Etihad Stadium in Docklands between Essendon and North Melbourne. And, well, it was an interesting start by North Melbourne because they kept Essendon goalless in the first quarter. They hadn't kicked a goal. In fact, they only kicked 2 behind. So Essendon were down 0-2 to North Melbourne 4-2. Essendon scored another 2 behinds in the second quarter, and Adelaide were able to lead 8-6 to 0-4. So Essendon had no goals whatsoever in the first half at all, which was not very good from a Bomber point of view. At three-quarter time, Essendon were 5-5 to North Melbourne 10-10. Somehow, though, Essendon were able to fight back in the fourth quarter and only make it a 14-point win to North Melbourne, the final score being 8-12-60 to the Kangaroos 10-14-74. Okay, now the goal kickers for this match, Vantasia kicked 2, as well as Langford, Danaher And also Redmond Cooney kicking singles for Essendon, while for North Melbourne, Petrie Dorr, Waite kicked 2. Dorr, an interesting player who came in, of course. Can they fit him into the side once Higgins and stuff comes back? It's going to be very interesting, of course. Goldstein, the permanent ruckman there at North Melbourne. Wood, Jacobs, Thomas and Brown kicked singles each for the Kangaroos. Wood went to hospital during the game with a concussion, but is okay. He's been training this week. Of course, we'll have to tick the boxes to play in the game against Carlton next Saturday night. It was only a 14-point loss. From a North Melbourne point of view, though, they are still undefeated after 8 rounds of football, which is terrific to see. I know some people are saying, well, you know, they only got through by 14 points. That's not the point. They are winning their games, no matter what margin. And, well, they have got a tough game coming up next week, let's face it, against Carlton. But they're in good form, North Melbourne. At the moment, I think they're one of the big premiership contenders at this stage. The other Saturday afternoon game of round 8 was at Aurora Stadium, just north of where I am. Of course, a lot of you would know that already. And an interesting game, this one. Of course, Hawthorn led at quarter time 4-3 to 3-0. But interestingly, the Dockers actually led at half time 7-2 to Hawthorn 6-6. Hawthorn were able to fight back, keeping Fremantle goalless in the third quarter. They led 14-13 to 7-4 and then just steered away with the game. 17-14, 116 to the Hawks, 11-9, 75. Of course, the goal kickers for Hawthorn, Bruce and Gunston, two most of the important players at the Hawks. They are just unbelievably, fantastically good. They kick 3 each. Of course, O'Brien, McAvoy kicking 2 each, and then you have Palopolo, Lewis, Gibson, Hill, Birchall, Smith and Sisley, who kick singles each for the Premiers, the back-to-back-to-back Premiers, I should say. While for the Fremantle goal kickers, we have Walters, who kicked 2, Main, Hill, Kreuzer, Langdon, Neal, Griffin, Ballantyne, Mundy, and also Weller kicking singles each. For the Dockers, they're still yet to register a win in 2016. Not really what we expected, especially when they were minor premiers last year and made a preliminary final. Just firstly, by the way, on a serious note, best wishes and thoughts are with Jarryd Roughead as I record this. Of course, you may have heard the news that his melanoma has returned, and absolutely devastating, but I'm sure he'll fight through it and go through all the appropriate treatment to get through this. And hopefully we see him back playing the football that we love seeing him play. So best wishes and big thoughts with Jarryd Roughead. So a good win there for Hawthorn. Like I said, Fremantle yet to get a win in 2016. The Saturday twilight game was at Spotless Stadium between the GWS Giants and the Gold Coast Suns. The Gold Coast Suns in their last 2 games have been absolutely pounded by Geelong and also Melbourne last week, which just wasn't acceptable, let's just say that. And the Greater Western Sydney Giants, well, they have been in terrific form. They probably have one of the most exciting lists in the competition at the moment, and they are still growing as a team. It is unbelievable. Now, they led at quarter time 4-3 to 1-0. Gold Coast were in it, especially at half time. It was 9-9 to 4-0, although they were down, the Gold Coast Suns. And then at 3/4 time, it just fell away from them, really. It was 16-13 GWS to the Gold Coast Suns, 7-1. And in the end, GWS just pounding them by 90-odd points, and in the end, winning 22-17, 149, defeating the Suns 9-4, 58. This was the first of 2 terrible games from Queensland teams, and, well, it's just not good at the moment from a Queensland point of view. The Giants goal kickers, Cameron kicked 7, Palmer, Lobb kicked 3 each, Kelly, Scully, Patton kicked 2 each, as well as Johnson, Steele and Wilson, who kicked singles each. You have the Suns players, Hall, Prestia, Skate and also Leslie kicking singles each for the Suns in front of over 8,000 there at Spotless Stadium. Gary Ablett going down with a concussion. People thought it was a knee, but it was in the end a concussion. He actually got told to go home from training on Monday when he turned up to training. They told him to go home. So, yeah, not good there from a Suns point of view. Not good from a Queensland point of view. I'll speak more about Queensland footy in just a minute because we're going to go to the Brisbane-Collingwood game right now. Yeah, of course, Saturday night at the Gabba. This was one of 2 Saturday night games, and I watched this game because my mum is actually a Collingwood supporter, so I watched this game, and I was quite shocked with what the Brisbane Lions were slapping up on the park, really. You might remember I actually tipped them last week, and I was sitting there thinking, wow, I've made a big mistake. Collingwood were under pressure going into this game as I dropped my pen. Collingwood were under pressure going into this game. You might remember this was probably Buckley's career on the line, to be quite honest with you, but they just came out in the first quarter, and like Geelong, they missed a lot of shots. They had 9 behinds, and they led at quarter time 4-9 to 0-0 the Lions. So the Lions didn't register a single score. So if you think the Essendon score was bad, well, this is just even worse. At half time, no different, although the Brisbane Lions were able to get 3 goals. Collingwood still led pretty dramatically, and they had 17 behinds in this by half time, 11-17 to the Lions, 3-0. At 3/4 time, still no different. Collingwood were putting the foot down on the pedal and not letting it go. 15-22 to the Lions, 7-2. And then in the end, Brisbane Lions, they lost pretty heavily in one of the worst games they've probably played, especially for this year, but for such a long time. I tell you what, especially at home, I thought, wow, they're going to have a good home record this year and maybe win a couple or string a couple of home games, but it's just not turning out to be that way. The final score, Lions 10-5-65, defeated by the Pies, 20-23, 143. The goal kickers for the Lions, you have Zorko, who kicked 4. He was probably the shining light of the game. Walker kicked 2. Bilwick, Green, Lester and Rich kicking singles each for the Lions. While for Collingwood, Cox kicked 4. He had a good game. The American, White, Crocker, Treloar kicked 3. That's better from White, by the way. That's someone that Collingwood really needs to stand up. Of course, Cloak not there at the moment. Really need White to step up and show what he's made of. Adams, Blair, DeGuy for Solo, Grundy, Moore and Varco kicking singles each for the Pies. What's next for Queensland footy? That's the thing. Gold Coast do have a fair lot of injuries, but I don't think that's a reason to, or an excuse to excuse them. The Lions, they've been pounded the last 2 weeks now, and after they had a very good game against a very good Sydney Swans side at the Gabba, this was very unexpected. So, look, Lee Matthews says that Queensland just can't sustain two teams. I don't know why they've got 2 teams. It is totally unfair, especially when I'm a Tasmanian, and Tasmania deserve to have their own team. If you go through the history, Tasmania should already have their own side in the AFL. It is ridiculous. We have more of an AFL passion than any other state, and yet Queensland get 2 teams, and they're both not working. And yet, if AFL, if you decide to expand the competition down here in Tasmania, you'll get good results. I can tell you that, because even though football is probably not 100% reliable and perfect here in Tasmania, I'm sure the whole population, or most of the population here in Tasmania, would get behind it. It is incredible that Queensland have 2 sides, and look at the results. Alright, now the other Saturday night game, this was one that I probably should have watched, and I actually watched the last 10 minutes or so and saw the end of the game, which I'm very pleased I did. This was a very interesting game throughout the whole night. The Swans, they led at quarter time, 5-3 to Richmond 3-5, but Richmond led at half time, 6-10 to 6-5. The Swans were able to take the lead back, 11-9 to 7-15, and then it came down to the last kick of the night. Richmond came back in the 4th quarter, and the last 20 seconds or so, what a jet this bloke is. Sam Lloyd. He was able to get the ball just inside 50, had a shot for goal. It was looking a tough kick, especially when you're kicking after the siren. It is a tough kick. If you're kicking after the siren to win the game for your team, it is a tough kick. He was able to kick it. Brian Taylor absolutely called it perfectly. He's one of the best commentators, in my opinion, here in Australia for football. He is outstanding, and I enjoyed his commentary. But I tell you what, Sam Lloyd, he put it through. He won the game for Richmond. It was their first win since round 1. And, well, hopefully, from a Richmond point of view, this will kickstart their season 2016. So the final score was 14-17, 101 Richmond, defeating the Swans 15-10, 100. The goal kicks for Richmond. Griffin kicked 5. Lloyd kicked 3, which included the sealer. Rewalt, Martin, Miles, Ellison, Rioli. Kick singles each for the Tigers. The Swans, Franklin kicked 5. He had a good game. Hannelbury kicked 2. You then have Heaney, Towers, Hewitt, Tippett, Lloyd, Jack and Papperley kicking singles each for the Swans. Just a bit of a brain fade last minute there for the Swans. They just needed to defend. Not sure why they didn't have numbers back behind the ball in their defence, because that's really what cost them in the end. But it's going to be interesting. They got a Friday night clash with Hawthorn. Of course, they're the side that they met in the 2012 and 14 grand finals. So it's going to be a very interesting game. They're back at the G after a loss there, and they have a chance to redeem themselves at the home of footy. So good win there by Richmond. They win by a point. And, well, they've got Fremantle next week, so an interesting game, fascinating game coming up at Domain Stadium next week. Sunday, there were 3 games like there normally is on a Sunday afternoon, and I started the Sunday watching Carlton and Port Adelaide, and Port Adelaide were leading at quarter time, 4-5 to 3-2. It was a very interesting game. Port Adelaide led again at half time, 8-9 to 7-4. It was still very close at three-quarter time, 10-12, 10-7 with Port Adelaide leading, so they're only leading by a few points. And then in the end, Carlton were able to get themselves in front and win the game by 2 points. The final score being 14-9, 93, defeating the Power 13-13, 91, who dropped points again. They have won 4 games in a row, the Blues. They defeated Fremantle, they then defeated Essendon, they then won last week against Collingwood, as we know, and they now defeated Port Adelaide, and this was their first back-to-back wins since 2011. How about that? So the goal kickers for Carlton, Everett kicked 3. He had a good game considering Casbolt was out of the game by half time and will miss I think I'm not sure how long, but it is a bit of time, let's just say that. Lamb and Jones kicked 2, as well as Cruiser. Jones getting on the scoreboard, which is very good to see. Murphy, Gibbs, Rowe, Tui, and also Sumner kicking singles each for the Blues. Wingard and Dixon, as well as Westhoff, kicked 2 each for the Power. You then have Boak, Broadbent, Ebert, Hartlett, Trengove, Eamon, and also Young kicking singles each for the Power. So they get another loss, the Power, and I'll tell you what, it's, they can't be winning and then losing. That's not how good sides make the top 8. So this is a real bad loss for them, and they'll be looking to bounce back next week against the Eagles. The 3:20 game was at the MCG between the Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. The Western Bulldogs travelling from Etihad Stadium for the first time in season 2016. And they started off very well, leading at quarter time, 5-5 to 2-2. Melbourne in the game, but Dogs still led at half time, 8-9 to 5-5. They still led at three-quarter time. Melbourne just lingering, but the Dogs were able to keep control, 12-10 to 7-9. And then in the end, Melbourne lost 12-10, 82, defeated by the Western Bulldogs, 17-12, 114. The goal kickers for the D's, Watts kicked 3, as well as Kennedy, Garlick kicking 2. You then have Viney, Petraka, Oliver, McDonald, and also Hogan kicking singles each for the Melbourne Football Club. Stringer had a good day on the board. He kicked 5. Redpath kicked 3. He's taken Boyd's spot at the moment, although he is suspended this week and won't play against the Giants. So from a Dogs' point of view, that is not good, considering Boyd is probably not going to come back this week. You then have Pick and Dixon kicking 2 each, McLean, Liberatore, Wallace, Dale and Hunter kicking singles each for the Dogs. Tom Liberatore, let's talk about him, equalled the AFL tackles for a game. He got 19 tackles, applied 19 tackles. That is incredible in itself. And congratulations to him, because that was just a fantastic performance by him. He only got second best by the Western Bulldogs, Bontempelli getting best on ground. But I tell you what, he had a fantastic game. So, yeah, very, very interesting there. Good win by the Dogs. They have got back-to-back wins now. They've got a tough game coming up this round coming. So it'll be interesting. We'll look at that very shortly. And finally, we look at the Twilight Sunday game. And just like last week, it was a boring Sunday Twilight game. I tell you what, St Kilda got absolutely thumped. I'm just going to read out the final score. 2012-132 West Coast defeating St Kilda 3-11-29. That is a thumping. Not good enough because St Kilda haven't been too bad, especially last week against North Melbourne. And, you know, to come out, even though it is away from home, and I know it's hard to beat the Eagles at Domain Stadium, but I tell you what, they need to perform better than that because that is not acceptable. The goal kickers for the West Coast, Lacroix kicked a big 6, Kennedy kicked 5, Hutchings Darling kicked 2 each, and then you have Cripps, Lessett, Hill, McGovern and Yeo kicking singles each for the Eagles. St Kilda, they only scored 3 goals in the whole entire game, as well as 11 behinds, as you heard. Stephen Bruce Weller kicking the only 3 goals there for the Saints. So that is round 8. It was an interesting one. Let's get to the stats. And we start with the leading goal kickers. Franklin is leading with 34 goals after his 5-goal bag against the Tigers on Saturday night against Richmond. Second, Tom Lynch there on 30. You then have Jenkins from Adelaide on 25, level with Josh Kennedy, who also kicked 5 goals in the round. They're also level with Jarryd Roughead, all on 25 goals. So Jenkins, Kennedy, Waite, all level on 25 goals. Here's a question for you. Will Franklin get 100 goals this season? It's an interesting thought, that's for sure. Hope he does. The leading disposals, Lachie Neale has taken the leading disposal first position on 266 disposals. Lachie Hunter is second on 257. He has to be leading the Western Bulldogs best and fairest at the moment. He is in incredible form. Gaff third, 253. You have fourth, Treloar on 249. Then finally, Aaron Hall on 247 disposals. The marks, Riewoldt leads the marks on 89. You have Shaw on 78. You then have Doherty on 64, level with Simpson, and then Kennedy is on 62. And then we finish off with the tackles. Swallow in front on 68. You have Shields on 58, level with Viney. You have Bixarves on 57, and then Rory Sloane, hasn't he been in good form for the Crows? He's on 53 tackles. And then finally, the AFL ladder after round 8. 8 games have gone by. North Melbourne have won all 8 of them and are sitting on top of the ladder, top of the world on 32 points. You then have Geelong in second. They've only lost the 1. They're on 28 points. You have GWS there who have only lost 2, of course, in round 1 against Melbourne, and then also against the Swans. So they're on third. They're level with their Sydney rivals, their New South Wales rivals there. The Sydney Swans are on fourth. They are actually level with the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn. The Dogs are on fifth. They fell from fourth to fifth, even though they got the win. It's percentage that counts. You then have Hawthorn there on sixth. West Coast on seventh. Rounding out the top 8 is Adelaide. Melbourne just sitting outside that top 8, level with Adelaide Crows on points. They could, if they win this week, they could get in there into the top 8. Port Adelaide are on 10th. Carlton have rise to the occasion, are on 11th. Collingwood 12th. Gold Coast 13th. You then have St Kilda on 14th. Richmond 15th. Brisbane Lions 16th. You then have Essendon on 17th. And then Fremantle yet to get a win on 18th. So that is the ladder after round 8. Okay, time now to have a look at the round 9 fixture, and we start on Friday night at 7:50 p.m. at the home of footy, the MCG. Is Hawthorn taking on the Sydney Swans. As you know, the Sydney Swans lost there on Saturday night at the same ground by a point. Kick on the siren. Sam Lloyd scored it. They'll be looking to bounce back in this one, of course. Hawthorn, they've kind of moved their way into some sort of good form after wins against Richmond and Fremantle. So this will be probably a tight game all night, and I'm not sure who to tip for this one. I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to wait until after I record this to pick a tip. So you'll see somewhere on the screen my tip. But it's going to be a good game, this one. Like I said, the MCG, 7:50 p.m. It's the Friday night game of round 9. Saturday, another 5 games. It starts at the MCG at 1:45 p.m. between the Pies and the Cats. The Cats getting a very good win, and same with the Pies in round 8. So, not sure about this game. I think Collingwood are going to find this much more tougher than the game against the Lions. So I think the Cats should win easy, probably by about 30 points, you would have to say. This game at the MCG, as I mentioned, at 1:45 p.m. The 2:10 game is at Metricon Stadium between the Gold Coast Suns and the Adelaide Crows. I tell you what, this is probably going to be another thumping for the Gold Coast Suns. I cannot see them winning this game. The Crows should bounce back in this one, and if they don't, then they don't deserve to make the top 8. The Saturday twilight game is Port Adelaide and West Coast. Adelaide Crows rivals, of course. Port Adelaide taking on the Eagles, who haven't won an away game this season. So going to be an interesting game, this one. 4:35 p.m. at Adelaide Oval on Saturday. I think I'm going to tip Port Adelaide for this one, even though they lost narrowly by 2 points to Carlton. I think they might win this one because I think the Eagles' away form has not been good enough this season. But it will be a tight one, let's just say that. So this is going to be an interesting game, this one, like I just mentioned. 2 Saturday night games. We've got Fremantle taking on Richmond at the Domain Stadium starting at 7:40 p.m. This is the free-to-air Saturday night game for this Saturday night. This will be an interesting game also, of course. Fremantle yet to get a win in season 2016. I think they're going to lose another. I think Richmond, after that win, and after that last quarter, which was probably the best quarter they've played all year, I think they're just going to win against Fremantle by maybe 3 points. So maybe another narrow win, but it's going to be a good game, this one. Of course, Richmond defeated Fremantle last year over there at Domain Stadium, so that's pursued me a little bit to pick Richmond. And the last game, the Saturday night game, the other Saturday night game, North Melbourne and Carlton starting at 7:25 p.m. at Etihad Stadium. This game should be a good one. I think it will be just like the game against the Saints when North Melbourne played a couple of weeks ago there in round 7 it was. I think it might be just a bit like that one. I think North Melbourne are going to win this one though. Not comfortably though. I think it will be a narrow win. Sunday starts at the MCG between the D's and the Lions. This game starting at 1:10 p.m. Like I mentioned, at the MCG, home of football, should be a big win to the D's. I don't think it will be as much as Collingwood did to the Lions last week in round 8, but I think it's going to be a good win for the Melbourne. It should be anyway. They are an exciting team, and even though they lost to the Dogs, they did lose to a pretty good outfit on the day. So Melbourne is my tip for that one. This is a massive game. Really looking forward to this one. You know I'm a Dogs supporter, but I tell you what, I think this is going to be one of the best contests we've seen for this season. We know how good Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn were. Well, if you put Western Bulldogs and GWS together, this might be one of the most best games of season 2016. This is at Spotless Stadium. Of course, the Giants, very hard to beat at Spotless Stadium, as well as Manuka Oval. The two venues have been pretty kind to them. So this game at 3:20 p.m. This is a Channel 7 free-to-air game. And I'm going to tip the Bulldogs because I'm a Bulldogs supporter. I think the Bulldogs can legitimately go over there and win, but I think it's going to be a tough task because GWS are in fantastic form. They have probably one of the most exciting lists, and if you have to stop Cameron, who kicked 7 goals on the weekend. That's something they have to do, the Dogs. And whether they can do it without suckling Murphy as well as Boyd, who has just been suspended, that's Matthew Boyd, is a question in itself. Fletcher Roberts probably will go to the side, and then you'll probably see someone like Collins or Hamling or possibly someone like that come into the side. So if they can stop Cameron and the likes of that, they might win this game. And I'm going to tip them because I'm a Dog supporter and I think they will win. So that game there going to be an interesting one, probably the game of the round. And the final game, St Kilda and Essendon. This will be a good game, 4:40 p.m, the twilight game at Etihad Stadium. Going to tip St Kilda there to bounce back after their thrashing loss to the Eagles last week in round 8. So that is round 9. It's going to be an interesting round. Hope you enjoy it. And that is it for the Ultimate AFL Show, episode 14. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content on this channel, as well as a new episode of the Ultimate AFL Show every week. I'm Jacob. Enjoy round 9. It's going to be a cracker. I'll be back next week with another episode. Bye for now.